These are devotions for people at a social distance. This morning in my devotions, I was reading in the book of Malachi, the very end of the book of Malachi, which in our Christian Bibles comes at the very end of the Old Testament for a very specific reason, and it has to do with this verse. It's the end of the chapter 4 says, verses 5 and 6. Lo, I will send you the prophet Elijah before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents, so that I will not come and strike the land with a curse. And of course, the reason why Christians have arranged their Bibles so that this comes at the end of the Old Testament is because it immediately takes us into the New Testament, the Gospel of Matthew, where John is identified as John the Baptist is identified as the fulfillment of this prophecy, and this idea that John is the second coming in a sense of Elijah runs through the Gospels and certainly runs through Christian tradition. And I understand that, and that makes a lot of sense in many ways. And yet, look closely at this prophecy. This is what the prophet Elijah is supposed to do. He's supposed to turn the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents. That is the key task, which is really kind of interesting because that's not really something that the prophet Elijah was famous for, about bringing together the generations, about, healing relationships between parents and children. I don't remember too many stories. There's maybe one, too many stories about, familial relations in the book of Elijah, in the stories of Elijah. And when you look at the ministry of John the Baptist, well, the relationship between parents and children doesn't really come into it. So it's kind of interesting that this is the thing that the prophet Malachi focuses on, this question of relationships between parents and children, where their hearts are turned, and how this allows us to escape disaster. So how do I understand this prophecy? Well, I think it's kind of very fitting for where we are today. Because what Malachi seems to be saying is that the way you avoid disaster is by changing your perspective. And instead of just thinking of your own needs and the needs of your own generation, you begin to expand that. And parents look at their children and think about what they are going to need, and vice versa. And that change of perspective really changes how we look at what's going on. And that allows us to avoid disaster. It's kind of fitting, isn't it? When you think of one of the greatest threats we're dealing with now, which has to do with global climate change and the effects of that, and how much of that has been driven for so long by every generation thinking only of its own need, every politician thinking of the needs of the next election and how they can get through to the next election without looking at that long-term intergenerational need. That's the kind of Elijah that we need, right? The kind of Elijah that can change our perspective on where we are going as a society long-term, not just short-term. So kind of an interesting way to think of this prophecy of Malachi. And yeah, there's certainly a sense in which John the Baptist is a fulfillment of this prophecy, but I don't think that it's just a one-time thing. And we need an Elijah today to come along and give us that change of perspective as well. Some of my thoughts today. Gracious God, what we need more than anything probably is a change in perspective, a change in focus and priority in our thinking about the things that threaten our world and threaten our society. By your grace, send us the Elijah that we need. Amen.